All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a situation that, honestly, is often totally misunderstood, or just outright ignored the second it drops out of the daily headlines. We're talking about the chilling gap between the official statistics and the actual ground reality of the Assam floods in India. By digging into the government's very own data, the meteorological reports, and historical records, we are going to find out what's really happening beneath those floodwaters. Because, this isn't just a natural disaster.
Let's start with a number, 68. This is the official government death toll for the recent floods. Now, in a country of over 1 billion people, 68 is one of those statistics that you might just casually scroll past in your morning newsfeed. It sounds like a tragic, sure, but relatively contained natural event. But as we dig into the reality on the ground, we quickly realize that this number is absolutely not the whole truth. In fact, 68 is simply the count of the people the authorities could actually reach. Now, juxtapose that initial number with a really startling figure admitted by the chief minister himself, 80,000. That's the number of people who were completely unreachable by rescue teams. 80,000 individuals, isolated, unaccounted for, and left entirely to fend for themselves during the absolute peak of the disaster. When the government openly admits they couldn't even reach tens of thousands of their own citizens, well, it turns this from a simple statistic into a massive, systemic crisis. Because, think about it.
What's truly terrifying about all this is the sheer speed of the devastation. Survivors in newly flooded places like Charaideo are reporting they had just 15 minutes to act. Literally 15 minutes to figure out what to pack, who to grab, and where to run. In some of these villages, the waters inexplicably rose up to 10 meters. We are talking about multi-story levels of water suddenly surging into villages that had never, in their entire history, flooded before. Just imagine that for a second.
The true scale of this tragedy really reveals itself when we move past the macro numbers. We're looking at 7 Lakh. That's 700,000 total people affected. Entire districts like Sivasagar and Charaideo were completely submerged. But let's bring it down to the reality for just one family. The Dabra family in Lakwa Bayapuri village. Floodwater entered their home at 7 p.m. Within minutes, 4 family members, a mother, a daughter, and 2 sons who tried to save them, were just washed away. They called the government helpline, but no one answered in time. And today, over 2,000 children are sitting in temporary tarpaulin relief camps with absolutely zero data on whether medical workers like Aisha's.
To explain this sudden, terrifying devastation, the government initially blamed a cloudburst in neighboring Nagaland. Now, cloudburst is a bit of a magic word in disaster management, right? It kind of shifts all the blame onto nature. But as we objectively compare the claims, the Indian Meteorological Department's own data completely shatters that alibi. The scientists explicitly stated that yes, while rainfall was heavy, it was actually not a cloudburst. And more importantly, this level of rain is not at all unprecedented for the Northeast region.
To put that into perspective, the strict meteorological definition of a cloudburst is rainfall of 100 millimeters or more occurring in a single hour. But what actually happened in Nagaland's Mon district, they received 137 millimeters of rain spread out over 8 to 9 hours. It wasn't some hour-long freak deluge, meaning we absolutely cannot blame this unprecedented disaster entirely on the sky.
Well, if nature alone didn't cause this destruction, and the rain wasn't some freak anomaly, we have to investigate the man-made factors. We have to look down at the ground, specifically at the 70-year-old crumbling infrastructure that was supposedly built to protect these people, and ask a tough question: who is actually responsible for this?
Listen to this breakdown of the data. Back in 1954, Assam started building mud embankments as a cheap, temporary fix to hold back rivers. Fast forward 70 years later, and it is still their primary defense. But the state's water resources minister admitted on the assembly floor that out of 4,800 kilometers of these mud embankments, a massive 3,000 kilometers have completely lost their water-holding strength. That means almost 2/3 of their defense is fundamentally compromised. And actually, it gets worse. When water does breach these weakened walls, the walls then act as broken barriers that trap the floodwater inside the villages for weeks, completely unable to recede. Infrastructure is compounded by a massive environmental loss. Historically, Assam has these amazing natural sponges, wetlands and marshes that absorb excess rainwater. But take the Panidihing wetland in Sivasagar, for example. In 2001, it spanned 19 square kilometers. By 2021, it had drastically shrunk to just 6 square kilometers. We are literally paving over the Earth's natural drainage systems. When the sponge is gone, that excess floodwater has absolutely nowhere to go, but straight into people's living rooms. Combined with those shrinking wetlands, we have a profound infrastructure problem where our own development is turning against us. New roads are being built at higher elevations to stay dry, but often
Old bridges are being replaced with tiny, inadequate culverts. The result is that these elevated roads literally act as massive concrete dams. They completely block the natural flow and drainage of water across the plains, which artificially exacerbates the flooding in residential areas. Even the chief minister himself has acknowledged this huge infrastructural flaw.
Looking objectively at the state assembly records, the financial side of this is, honestly, just as concerning. We see staggering amounts of public money spent on these temporary fixes every single year. Just analyzing the 2023 to 2024 data, repairing a mere 16 kilometers of embankment cost 67 crore rupees. That's roughly 4 crore rupees per kilometer. And between 2021 and 2024, over 3,400 crores were spent on 637 projects. And yet the floods are worse. We even have proven cases, like in Sivasagar this year, where 6 officials were suspended because video evidence showed them using highly substandard materials for those exact embankment repairs.
So the unavoidable question we must ask, and it's a question local journalists and citizens are desperately raising right now, is this: where is the transparent, itemized list of these repair expenses? If 4 crore rupees are being spent per kilometer of mud wall, the public deserves a line-by-line accounting of where that money went. Why aren't more corrupt contractors being permanently blacklisted when these multi-crore walls?
Thinking, well, it's a massive natural force. Maybe this level of tragedy is just inevitable, right? But to prove that cyclical natural disasters can be successfully managed without massive casualties, we don't even have to look far. Within the exact same country, the state of Odisha provides the perfect blueprint and serves as our proof of concept.
Consider Odisha's journey for a second. In 1999, a supercyclone hit the state, resulting in a horrific 10,000-plus deaths. It was a massive wake-up call. Following that tragedy, Odisha didn't just rebuild the same mud walls and hope for the best. No, they implemented actionable, systemic planning. They created the country's first dedicated disaster agency. They built massive, permanent concrete cyclone shelters. They installed early warning sirens and trained village-level warning teams. Today, when equivalent superstorms hit, they evacuate millions in advance, drastically dropping their death toll to under 20 per storm. The storms certainly didn't stop, but the dying did.
But here is the catch for Assam and why they can't just copy-paste the Odisha model without adapting it. While Odisha's cyclones hit known coastlines, so they know exactly where to build the shelters, Assam's floods are literally changing their geography. Because of those blocked natural drainages and failed embankments we talked about earlier, the water is now swallowing entirely new districts. Places like Nazira and Titabar that have never flooded before are suddenly going underwater. And because they've never flooded before, they have absolutely...
The crucial point we need to take away from all this is that systemic change in Assam requires 3 very specific steps. Number 1, stop relying solely on 70-year-old temporary mud embankments and start actually integrating road and wetland management into flood planning. Number 2, mandate total public financial transparency. Literally pasting the itemized lists of repair expenses on every village door. And number 3, draw completely new hazard maps. We have to acknowledge these newly vulnerable regions as active flood zones and immediately start building permanent shelters and warning systems right there.
As the waters slowly recede in Assam, that is actually when the most dangerous phase begins. The news cameras pack up, the headlines change, and the rest of the country moves on. But it leaves us with one haunting question to ponder, reflecting back on that official statistic we started with. If 68 is only the count of where the authorities have actually reached, who will count the rest? And more importantly, when will the system finally change so we never have to count them again?